for me, using zigs throughout the course of the winter and the spring is just the perfect way to fish for the carp. They spend a lot of their time off the bottom. You've only got to look at the number of anglers that are fishing the lake to see how many fish are actually getting caught on the bottom, and it's normally hardly none. It's just something that I've always done. A lot of my friends have done it as well, and we've had some great winter stroke spring fishing for these fish off the bottom. It's a really simple tactic to use, and it catches an awful lot of carp. And until like during the spring, when they properly wake up and the water temperature rises and they're actually willing to go down and feed properly and hard on the deck, then it's a tactic that it's too good to ignore, really. The only way I can describe the right time to chuck a zig out is when it is pants for fishing. If you think that you're not going to get a bite, that is the time to think, right, yeah, I'm going to get 3 zigs on. Get them out in the pond and sit there and just chill out. You need to do it on either, if you're using 2 rods, both rods. If you've got 3 rods, all 3 rods, spread them out, cover your options, cover your different depths and your colours, and just take it with a pinch of salt. The way I look at it is, if I think that, for me, I can only go fishing when I can go. I can't look at the weather report and think, oh, I'll just swan off fishing on Friday because there's a nice low southwesterly coming in. I haven't got that option, so I can only go when I can go. If the weather's rubbish, then, well, that's hard luck. That's the day that I've got to go fishing. So you've got to deal with the conditions, and zigs is definitely a way to help you with that, because when they don't want to feed, they won't feed, and your only option, like I said, is to go to the fish and just try and scratch a bite out. When I say the rubbish weather for zig fishing, I mean like high pressure, sunny, freezing cold, half frozen lake, anything that is just going to put the carp off of feeding. Even a lot of angling pressure can do that. If you've got a lake, for example, Brasenose 1, if you get 50 blokes sat around there on a weekend, pummeling the death out of it, everybody's putting a bit of bait in, everybody's casting out, those fish, they're the most pressured fish in the country, and the first thing they do is they come up off the bottom where there's any danger of being caught and go and sit in an area out in the middle of the pond where nobody can touch them. And if you can put hook bait to them, you've got a good chance to get a bite, and especially in 14, 15 foot of water, they could be anywhere from 6 to 12 foot off the bottom. There's certain lakes that respond better to zig fishing and are sort of what I would call tailor-made for it. And that's any lake that has got, say, like a shallow end at one end down to a deeper sort of dam type end with a central area, like a bowl area down one end, that the fish can congregate and sit up off the bottom. But I would say that you can catch on any lake on zigs. I've got my own fishery. It's only 4 to 6 foot deep, and you can catch on zigs in there. Todd Bamana is a very similar setup. It's shallow. It's a very coloured, murky lake that's only 4 to 6 foot deep, and that responds brilliantly to them. And then obviously the linear complex is big gravel pits. There's always a time to fit a bit of zig fishing into your fishing if the conditions are right. And the main thing for catching a carp is fishing the correct way to catch it. You wouldn't come here and fish zigs if you thought it was really good weather for fishing on the bottom, but they can definitely get you out of trouble. Over the years, where I've been using zigs for so long, I've sort of narrowed my setup down to a very minimal setup. It's dead simple and it works perfectly for me, so I don't change it now, and that is just literally a short length of 3mm silicone sleeve, a slick lead clip, so it's a lead clip with no grooves on the spine of the lead clip, and this is so when you put the lead on, the silicone sleeve goes over the back, and then when you get a bite, the lead obviously ejects. Now you don't have to do that all the time. You can use, if you wanted to keep hold of the lead and not get rid of it, which I would advise if you're fishing like shallower lakes or you're catching many fish, then just a 3 or 4 ounce inline lead is perfect. But for me, most of my fishing is done for better fish nowadays, so I use a slick lead clip setup, and normally like a Horizon 4 1/4 ounce lead, and that's just to come off on the take. Extra large anti-tangle sleeve, we've made these purposely, so when your lead is flying out, when you're on the cast, it actually keeps your zig hook bait further away from your main line, and it just reduces tangles no end, and they're absolutely perfect for that. I don't use tiny little lines. I've gone through it in the past, and all you end up doing is when you're playing a fish, you're always just bricking it that, you know, that you've got a light line on. I just use 15-pound Zig and floater line, winter or summer, whether I'm catching a load of carp or I'm just fishing for one fish. If you're fishing for a big fish, you want to land it. If you're fishing for lots of fish, you don't want to be using one Zig for every fish, so you want to make sure they're nice and robust. Size 8 or 6 Zig and floater hook, they're super sharp, and with using the Zigger liners in whatever colour I choose for the venue, the Zig and floater hook actually allows like a really nice gate on the way the liner sits, but without having to use a really big hook. So they're perfect for that. And you know, it's a dead simple setup, but it's mega effective. I've never gone down the road of, like, you see these sort of like imitation bugs and bits and pieces. I don't think that, to me, that plays any part in Zig fishing. A fish hasn't got hands, it's only got a mouth. You see them swimming along, they pick up leaves, and 9 times out of 10, I think with Zig fishing is pure curiosity. It's just something mid-water, they pick it up, and if it's got a 4-ounce lead on the bottom of it, then it's just too late, they've made a mistake. Some aspects of Zig fishing, you will need a few hook lengths. I mean, for me, I needed a few Zig hook lengths throughout the, you know, the whole year. So I store them on a Zig disc, and it's perfect as well because you can tie them up, and as you tie them, you just literally put your liner on, tie your hook on, hook it on the Zig disc, and one revolution of the disc is actually a foot, so that you know if whatever lake you go into, you know, if you want 15 footers, you just go around 15 times, you tie a loop on the end, put a pin in, and that's 15 foot. You don't have to mess about measuring them out and having line everywhere and trying to tie it and getting in a tangle. You just literally put your hook in with your liner on, count round, tie a loop, put the pin in, and you can tie up a number of Zigs just the evening before you go in. You tie them up, you could do, like, you know, 15 Zigs no problem in a few minutes, and you know, that's a whole session's worth of Zigs for sure, if not more. The most confusing thing about Zig fishing is probably where you're going to place your hook bait in the water column. I would always start anywhere over 10 foot deep. I would always start in the top 2/3 of the water, going from there up to, like I say, just the depth of a carp underneath the surface. Smaller, shallower lakes, I would probably go the other way. I'd probably start in the bottom third, just because you know, they haven't got that scope to fluctuate up and down in the water column, and I think a lot of the time they would naturally sit a lot closer to the bottom. As for colour, the clearer the water and the higher that I fish the Zig, the darker the hook bait I would use. That's all I can say on that, really. The lower you go, the brighter I'd go, just to stand out, because obviously you're in you know, you're deeper down in the water column. If you're fishing a murky lake, then you want something that's bright, that's going to stand out, like black and red, yellow. We actually do some fluoro Zigger liners as well, which are really good in coloured water. And then in the clearer lakes, like the big gravel pits, they very rarely differ from either just black and red, or black and yellow. In the spring, sometimes if they're showing and you can't get a bite, an all yellow Zig can be brilliant, just to sort of stand out a little bit more, and that's it. Catching fish at night on Zigs, I think is much more simple than catching them in the day, and I say that because you just want something that is going to stand out and silhouette against any sort of moonlight or anything, and they've got no problem in detecting these Zigs at night. I remember I'd done a spring on St John's, and we caught catfish, we caught a load of carp, and I mean, you wouldn't think a 60 or 70 pound catfish that's a foot under the surface would ever find a Zig, but they're hooked plumb bottom lip. It's, you know, they've not just swam into the line, they are hooked because they have ate that Zigger liner. They're not hooked for any other reason. It blows your mind, because you think 1 o'clock in the morning, it could be sort of quite windy, and you'd still catch foot under the surface just on a black Zig, and yeah, but you've just got to accept it. It works, and that's all I need to know, and I'm mega confident in doing it. The main issue with Zigs is probably the length of the hook length, for sure, and for people that haven't used a long Zig, then yeah, I suppose it could throw a spanner in the works, but all I can say is just get the hook bait, just chuck it on the floor behind you, and just cast it out. The The main thing for the long hook length entangling is hitting the clip. So you've either got to hit the clip and feather it down with a, a nice cushion on the cast, or feather it down if you're not fishing to a clip. As for behind you, if you're that worried, put the hook bait in a cup. If there's loads of brambles about, then you could obviously just put like a small mat down, or offer you an hooking mat or something, and just forget about it really. Don't worry about that. It'll be fine on there. And when you cast it out, you'll see straight away if there's, like, say for instance, a leaf stuck on the hook. But I very rarely ever get a problem. I literally just throw it on the floor behind me and just chuck it out. Once you've hooked one, yeah, all right, you've got a long hook length. You just got to be a little bit careful. I've got a landing net that's got a 9-foot pole. It's got a little extension that I can put on it on the XT landing net. And that's brilliant. If I'm on my own, that gives me the perfect amount. So when I'm playing the fishing, I haven't got to struggle with a hook length. I can just net it on my own. Job's a good one. But if you've got somebody about, then just call them over. If someone's walking by, just get them on the net. Just say, and then you can stand slightly behind them, play them in nice and easy. But I would say, like, for 99% of my zig fishing, which is normally around sort of like 9 to 11 foot zigs, you've got no problem with a normal landing net pole. You just, the leg clip will come up quite tight to the tip, but it's no problem. It's the perfect distance. By the time you've got the rod like that and the landing net's out like that, you've got a massive distance between the two, and it just really ain't an issue. When you see that carp on the end of that line, you will get it in the net one way or the other. It doesn't matter too much. You'll be, it's going in there no matter what. Which is true, isn't it? You would, like, if you hook one, you would literally just jump in and net it or whatever. It doesn't matter. You'd just be on it. It's like throw the rod behind you and just get in there. When you hook a fish on a zig, it can either go one or two ways. In the winter, when they're a bit lethargic, you might get just the odd little beep. So you need to make sure you've got really good bite indication. And also, if you're fishing two zigs like a rod length apart, you need to be on it. So you need to make sure you've got the right buzzer, the right indicator, to make sure you know that you've got a fish on there straight away, so you can pick the rod up and get a bit of line on the fish before it wipes your other rod out. When I say a good indicator for zig fishing, the indicator that I would always choose is a stiff or semi-stiff quiver arm. Like the little titanium quiver arms, you can get a lot of tension on this. They've got an adjustable hockey stick as well that you can use for it. And what this does is it creates the perfect tension, but doesn't have the bobbin sat right up against the rod where there's no movement. With it having like an inch drop or so, you've always got that indication when the fish is pulling away from you. And also with the stiffness of with the quiver arm, if it comes towards you, you've got an instant registration that that the lead's been moved, and there's only one thing that can move the lead, and that's a fish. So that's that's important, and something that's always played a part in zig fishing. And yeah, it's just, for me, it's the number one, the perfect indicator to tell you that there is there's been an occurrence.